But the free electron spin has a gyromagnetic ratio 660 times greater than that of the proton. If you can somehow inject free radicals or some free electron spins into your system under test, you can polarize them in the way that you'd normally polarize the proton spins, and you can somehow transfer this polarization using microwaves and quantum mechanics onto the nuclei of interest, and you can get a much, much bigger signal. So that's what I did my PhD in. It didn't really work in the end. Something people don't tell you about PhDs, it's not always that they pay off. I did manage to get a doctorate. I'm working on my corrections at the moment. I did also manage to now have a huge sense of job satisfaction in my now place of work, because stuff is going to plan, and I also won myself a mermaid tail at the end. That was my leaving present. I like mermaids, and they got me a lovely mermaid tail. It's worth it. Have you heard of the book Little Mermaid? The Little Mermaid. It's a Disney movie. That's not how it ends. I picked up yesterday in a charity shop a real version of The Little Mermaid. I feel like I don't have to say spoiler alert because most people are aware of the tale, but actually it's not how it ends. She doesn't live happily ever after with Prince Eric. That's a lie. In actual fact, she turns to Seafoam for not stabbing herself, stabbing the prince. Sorry, she doesn't stab Prince Eric and let his blood drip on her feet, turning her back into a mermaid. So she turns into Seafoam because of the witch's curse, but because she did the selfless act, she then gets to go to the kingdom of heaven. It's a very, very odd ending if you're expecting something different. But that's a sidetrack. So actually now I work in Opals, because it turns out for an early careers lecturer it's very difficult to try and get all of the expensive equipment associated with dynamic nuclear polarization in your new place of work. So I work with Lucas, I work with Dave on some Opal physics. Now, opals, they do have physics. It turns out opals are basically made of the same thing glass is made of, but they're made of loads and loads of tiny silica spheres. Okay? And these silica spheres close pack, and when they close pack, they create Bragg diffraction planes. Okay? You can see now I was searching Snell's law and then ending up on the marijuana Wikipedia page. But what this does is it actually makes opals, in my opinion, objectively beautiful. Okay? So opals display this wonderful green, red and blue hue, depending on what angle you look at them, because of this Bragg diffraction. It's not a pigment, and there's some physics going on. But when you try and make opals in a laboratory, you can't make them close pack unless your spheres are particularly monodispersed. That is to say that there's only one particular size of ball that you're using. Nature somehow uses bidispersed mixtures, and you can even get polydispersed mixtures that make some really, really beautiful opals. And it's my job, it's part of my job at Trent, to try and figure out how this works. But it does mean that I spend most of my time at work inspecting my microscopic balls for irregularities. And it turns out the small balls are blue, and the big balls are red, and that's because the size of the sphere actually has a dependence on the wavelength that you see, because it changes the packing inside the actual stone itself. So you get a nice blue hue from some of the smaller silica sphere arrays, and a nice red hue from some of the bigger ones. But it does mean that actually I'm probably one of the only people on LinkedIn that can be endorsed for ball science. Which is I don't need anyway, because my LinkedIn page is particularly strong. I've got lots and lots of friends on LinkedIn. I've got lots and lots of research on LinkedIn. I also have now the affiliation of the IOP, which is particularly useful, particularly for my students now. Get yourself a LinkedIn profile, boost it up. Join the IOP, you're part of the IOP already, who knows? Join the IOP, use it for employers in the future. But I thought I'd leave some of my other clubs off of my LinkedIn page because they're not necessarily very relevant. So for example, I was part of the Beano fan clan when I was very small. I don't think anyone needs to know about that anymore, except for you guys apparently. The Sea Life Centre Club I'm part of as well, but marine biology is passing me by. I'm now stuck in physics. But I am also part of an extremely exclusive club called the Baddie Club. Now this one needs a bit more explanation because it's actually something that I only joined 2 years ago. It sounds like something that maybe a child would join, but no, I actually created this club when I was in one of the final years of my PhD, it turns out being surrounded by very powerful lasers, ample supplies of cryogens, and many disgruntled human beings can turn you to villainy. And I actually thought, if I don't necessarily become successful when I finish my PhD, if I don't get a job, what I could do is I could become a supervillain. I knew where some of the stuff was, I knew how to get in the back door. I shouldn't really be saying, are you filming this?
No.
I've forgotten how to get in the back door now, just in case. Change the clothes, different door. One's on the yard. I need to work on the laugh.
It's alright, because we haven't changed the code.
But then I started recruiting for this baddie club in what I now realise was perhaps a very low-scale terrorist, inexperienced way of being terrorist organisation. Afterwards I planned to perform all this villainy. I actually only got one other member that joined, my girlfriend at the time, who's now my ex-girlfriend, and she's still part of the baddie club. I keep her in there because, in my opinion, she's one of the most villainous people out there. So she can stay for a while. But thankfully, I'm now at NTU. I have not become a villain. Perhaps you would have seen my face for a different reason. In that case, I'm loving my job, and apparently I'm spending my evenings presenting to you guys, my days trying to figure out ways to present to you guys, and my working life inspecting my tiny microscopic balls. So with that, I'm going to finish. I don't know if you want to ask me any questions about my villainous activities, but hopefully you enjoy whatever that was. Thank you very much.
Any questions?
There is one question, yes.
Do you have supervillain identities?
Yeah, so I do have a supervillain identity. It's not very exciting, and technically I don't know whether I can use it yet, but I figured that Dr. Ed, when you smush them together, makes Dread. And Dread sounds like a villainous name, so I was going to go with Dread. See, I actually was going to become a villain. That's maybe the spooky evidence of it. Yeah, Dread was going to be my name, and I was going to cause some mischief for sure, with liquid nitrogen magnets and polarization of people's spins and that. Yeah. There is another question.
How big are your balls?
My balls. So it turns out looking for microscopic balls, nanoscopic balls, is particularly difficult. So I get an opal, an actual opal. There's a number of different places you can get them from. So I get them from Honduras, Latvia, Ethiopia, Australia. There's all sorts of wonderful places you can get opals from. The only ones that I've actually ever seen these balls on are the Ethiopian ones. So we actually etch them with hydrofluoric acid. You guys know what hydrofluoric acid is? No one likes hydrofluoric acid? No? I don't like hydrofluoric acid, and I was going to be a villain. But yeah, you etch these things in hydrofluoric acid. It takes some of the surface layer off, some of the carbonate cement that keeps these silica spheres together, and you can see, depending on the colour, anywhere between 200 nanometers and 700 nanometers for visible colour play in an opal. So they're very small. It's really exciting to see. First time I saw my balls, I was like, yes, I actually have some balls, God. Because it took me about 2 weeks to find them in the first place. Yeah, they're small. I have very small balls.
You've got lots of them.
Have I got lots of them? Yes, I have. I have pictures on my telephone as well. So if you want to come and see the pictures of my balls, when I've finished, I have them on my phone, and we can look at pictures of my balls together. Yeah, so it's really good. So what I'm actually looking for is we're trying to find some evidence of nature selecting certain sizes of balls. So to get the colour play, you do need these Bragg planes. And if there are, if it's too polydispersed, these planes just can't happen. So nature has a way of saying, okay, well this is the right size, we can put it in somehow, we'll take this one out. So what we're trying to find is areas where there's lots and lots of order. So you see this long range order, you see lots of balls touching each other. Balls, just words, just not balls. But you also see next to them areas of disorder, and the balls in the disordered regions tend to be different sizes. The polydispersity seems to be far greater, and using that you can try and figure out if there is any way that nature, in its glorious power, somehow created this wonderful object that people wear around their necks and claim are unlucky. Thank you. Oh, yes, please.
Do you have any advice for us normal mortal scientists who might be budding supervillains?
Yeah, don't tell rooms full of people. Don't tell rooms full of people. Try and keep it a secret, and just slowly siphon away resources. Possibly. Yeah, I've got some other advice, but it's not safe for this room. It's really nasty. I was going to get real dark with my supervillain, so we'll keep that one to myself.
I know.
Yeah, we've talked about it, but yes, please, Matthew.
So, where do these balls come from? Are they natural? Are they biologically origined? Are they a natural mineral? Do we know?
So we believe they're natural. They're a natural mineral. They're somewhat created. So when the opals are made, there's lots of stuff at play. So I am a physicist. I'm not a geophysicist yet. So I might have to become one in the future, depending on what other work I get. So I work in milk at the moment, but that's a different story. It's believed that when these opals are forming, there's lots of processes at play between the water content of whatever original mixture you have, how watery it is, so how much water is dissolved in some of the other material that's there, and the carbonate cement that actually holds everything together, and the silica supply that's there, forms these spheres are nature's shape. It's just what nature likes to create, so bubbles or spheres, and water droplets kind of one of these spheres, except for gravity and that nonsense. Everything that we try and make wants to be a sphere. And these silica spheres are just nature making this stuff out of the natural thing. Yes. Okie dokie. Thank you. Well, in which case, I finished my question.